Just like a basketball team, what do? They go over the basics because the basics wins championships. Thank you guys for tuning to another episode of the Blueprints to Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Hugh Berry. Today, we're going to talk about 3 simple ways you can build trust. And understand that these ways that I'm going to go over are really, really simple, but they're difficult to do. Why is that? Because in a society that we live in, people don't really understand that in order to be successful, you just got to be consistent. In order to be successful in any endeavor, you really just got to do the simple things, right? Just like a basketball team, what do? They go over the basics because the basics wins championships. The basics wins championships. So we're going to go over 3 simple ways how to build trust with, your employer, your friends, the people around you, whoever you're looking to build trust with. If you own a business and you want to build trust with your clients, these are things that you can do to build trust, right? And without further ado, I'm going to get right into it now. Understand that the number one person that you want to build trust with is yourself. And how do you build trust with yourself? Basically, you build trust with yourself by showing up, right? Stepping out of your comfort zone, testing your limits, right? Seeing the things that you can do. And I'm not a believer of we can't do anything, right? There's a quote that says, the man who thinks he can and the man who thinks he can't are both right. So you kind of dictate what you're capable of doing, right? Because I believe we have unlimited capacity to do things, right? We have unlimited capacity to accomplish what we want to in life, but we always let our minds take us out. But not to go off on a tangent, I believe we're all capable of doing great things. So basically, you build trust with yourself by showing up, right? By testing your limits, by doing things that you wouldn't normally do. And what I mean by that, things that are going to help you in a constructive way. I don't mean like if you're not somebody who usually drinks, you're going to start drinking. I'm not talking about things like that, those destructive things. I'm talking about constructive things, right? You're testing your limits. You're stepping out of your comfort zone so you can grow. Because when you step out of your comfort zone, understand that's your growth zone. So that's how you build. That's the number one way to build trust with yourself. Show up, do what's required. And a lot of these things that are these 3 simple things that I'm gonna go over are things that are gonna help you build trust with yourself. Because when you're building trust with other people, you're also building trust with yourself. The number one thing that you can do, on how to build trust with yourself, the thing that I'm going to share with you guys is to show up, right? Really simple. Show up. If you know you're supposed to be somewhere at a certain time, or hey, you have a meeting with a client, and it's at 4:00, be there at 3:30. Be there early, right? So you always want to show up. Why? Because you're going to know yourself as somebody that shows up, and you're going to create a habit of showing up. And when people know that they can count on you to show up, who are they going to call? The person that's showing up. When I have an employee that always shows up on time all the time, in my mind, he's building trust with me because I always see him. He's always on time. He's always there. So I know when I make a schedule, I know they're going to show up. Because he's always showing up. So I know there's a high probability that he's going to be there. If he knows he's scheduled, he's going to be there, right? He or she is scheduled. They know they're going to be there. So the number one thing you can do is show up. Point number 2, right? Point number 2 is to be a person of your word, right? Have integrity. And I know this is we're not perfect people, right? We're imperfect people. Human beings are imperfect, perfectly imperfect. And it's not always easy to keep your word. But if you know that you can't keep your word, if you know there's some reason why it won't work out, say, hey, I don't think I can make this happen, but if anything changes, I'll let you know, right? Telling somebody that you're not really sure if you can do it because you know you're not gonna possibly do it is better than promising somebody that you're gonna do it and not doing it at all, right? I know that things happen in life, right? Life doesn't always go as planned. So it's not always going to be the most convenient thing to keep your word. But it's always best to keep your word because understand the things that you do, right? And when you're interacting with other people, is basically building your brand. And if someone knows you as someone who doesn't keep their word, doesn't keep their promises, doesn't show up, they're not going to trust you. They're not going to call you when, they know that they can call somebody else that's going to show up. They know they can call somebody else that's going to keep their word. Why would they call you? If I had two people, one person that keeps their word, that shows up every time, and then I have somebody who's sort of keeping their word, doesn't really show up, who do you think that I'm going to call? I'm going to call the person that keeps their word every single time. Even if I know that this person doesn't really finish the work that fast, if I know that they're going to finish and I know they're going to show up, I'd rather go with that person than going with somebody who does quick work, even if the quality of work is better. If I don't know this guy's going to show up, I'm probably not going to go with him, right? So that's the number 2 way of building trust is to keep your word, right? The last thing I would say when it comes to building trust, right, with other people, even with yourself, is to overpromise, underpromise, not overpromise, underpromise, overdeliver, right? Underpromise, overdeliver. What does that mean? That means that, hey, if you know that you're gonna do, if you know that you can do a certain job, try to add some extra value, right? For instance, if you know that people who are in retail, I'm just going to use this as an example. If you're in a retail business and you sell products, throw in a little extra sample there, here and there, right? Go a little bit above and beyond for the customer. These things go a long way because they're going to be like, man, this guy added so much value to me. This male or female, this man or woman added so much value to me that I'm going to go back and do business with them because every time I do business with them, they give me more than what I pay for. When people know they're getting more than what they pay for, they're always going to come back to you. You're going to earn people's businesses. And it's not really that hard to give people more what they pay for. It doesn't mean that you're going to give them extra products. It doesn't mean if that's not something you can do, you can always give them more customer service, better service, make the process of buying or doing business with you seamless and easy. These are things that people are going to say, you know what, I'm going to stick with this person every time, right? So those are the ways that you can build trust with somebody, right? A client, an employer, friends, family members, whoever you're looking to build trust with, these are things that you can do to build trust with others, right? Now, understand that trust, simple to build, difficult to come by. Very difficult to come by because when we think about this world, it's really, really hard for someone to trust somebody because most people are not worthy of trust, right? So simple to build, difficult to come by, and easy to lose. Understand that you can lose trust overnight, right? You can literally build trust it takes you years to build someone's trust. Or maybe it might take you a couple months to build someone's trust, but you can lose it in a matter of minutes, seconds, hours. Because why is that? Because if someone sees you, right, they look at you and they're like, hey man, this person, I always know them to be showing up and they didn't show up this time, or the quality of work wasn't like what I expect. Sometimes that will not be like the trust that you built won't go away overnight because they know your reputation precedes you, and they know, hey, this person always shows up. He didn't show up this time. They're more open to forgiving you, right? But understand, you always want to show up, and if you can't show up, you want to make that known ahead of time, right? So understand that trust is gold, right? If you earn someone's trust, it's worth more than gold because trust is hard to come by and people are hard to trust these days, right? People are hard to trust. And all these things that I explained, right? We'll go over them real quick. Showing up, being a person of your word, right? Number 2. And number 3, under promising and over delivering. These are things that you can do to build trust with yourself. You know, a lot of people have confidence issues. The reason why you have confidence issues is because you haven't built up enough competence. Once you build up enough competence and you know yourself to be someone that can be trusted when you're doing certain things, then you will develop trust in yourself, right? And that kind of applies across the board, right? Trust is fractal. And what do I mean by fractal? I trade, and fractal is something that they talk about where it's the same across the board, right? Fractal means the same across the board. That means if you go on this time frame when you're trading, it's the same. That time frame, that time frame. So when I'm applying it to trust, it's the same thing. When you try to apply these to a relationship with your friends, it's the same thing. Show up, be a person of your word, under promise, over deliver. When you're applying this to your relationships, show up, be a person of your word, under promise, over deliver. When you're applying this to building trust with yourself, show up, under promise, over deliver, right? So those were the 3 simple ways to build trust in any endeavor, right? And understand, guys, trust is worth more than gold. That is the podcast for today. Thank you for tuning in to the Blueprints of Freedom podcast. I will be back with a new episode next week, Wednesday. So stay tuned for that. Thank you guys for tuning in. Peace out.